Good morning, and welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to First Amendment Radio. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope now your interest is thoroughly piqued in this new book we're reading, The Global Vatican, by former ambassador to the Holy See, Francis Rooney. If you would like to get a copy of this book, please, I encourage you to do so and read it for yourself and come to your own conclusions. I hope those conclusions are based on history and fact rather than lore. You can get this book from Roman Littlefield, and I understand it's available now in the popular online bookstores, and I encourage you to get a copy. Yesterday we were talking about the situation the extreme minority Catholics were in during the colonial period, and that Maryland, and I call it Maryland because it was named after the Virgin Mary. It was a Roman Catholic colony. It was the only Roman Catholic colony to exist, and the rest of the colonies were Protestant. Some more so than others, but they all regarded Roman Catholicism a threat, and that's why the other colonies established laws prohibiting the exercise of Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism could not be freely practiced. No Mass was said in public. Catholic children had to be educated privately because, Catholic education was outlawed. Roman Catholics couldn't participate as ordinary citizens because they weren't regarded as citizens of this new land. How can one view a fellow man as a citizen if that fellow man has a first loyalty to a foreign power? Okay? How could I be called a citizen of the United States if my first loyalty, morally and temporally, is to say, Putin, to just name one of many? Well, I couldn't be regarded by any other American as an American citizen. Well, these Roman Catholics are required by Roman Catholic canon law to have their first loyalty to their spiritual father, the Pope, an Italian, a Roman, more specifically, the potentate of a state. Though it only be 109 acres, he is the head of heads and Lord of Lords of Vatican City, and he is the spiritual head of the entire Roman Catholic Church, roughly 1/7 of the Earth's population. And you talk about a powerful man. If you control the minds of 1/7 of the world's population, and you have morally bound them to your service and obedience and reverence and worship, because obedience and reverence is worship, well, then you are a power to be reckoned with in the world. More so even than the government of the United States. Now, you may call yourself a patriot, but if your first loyalty is to the Pope, well, you're not a patriot. You're not a citizen of the United States. You're a citizen first and foremost of Rome. Okay, that is the moral obligation of every Roman Catholic. Now, some people aren't as Roman Catholic as others. Okay, some people's first loyalty is to the United States, and if most Catholics began to realize what role their Pope is playing in American foreign and domestic policy, they would cease to be Roman Catholics, or they would at least resist the power of their Pope. Look, that's what happened in England, for instance. In England, there were many Roman Catholics. But when the Pope launched the Spanish Armada to overthrow the British crown, because it was Protestant, many Roman Catholics sided with the crown against their Pope. Now, if, for instance, no Roman Catholic in England was knowledgeable that the Spanish Armada was sent by the Pope, well, then they would naturally protect England from a Spanish invasion, because that's, for all intents and purposes, that's what it looked like. But many Roman Catholics knew it was the papacy that sent the Spanish Armada. Many Roman Catholics in England knew that it was a Jesuit plot to blow up Parliament in 1605, to completely destroy the British government, including the king. And they sided with England against this popish plot. So if American Roman Catholics were as knowledgeable as were some Roman Catholics in England about what the Pope is doing in this country, they would fight on the side of America against their papal king. But sadly, their priests don't tell them what the Pope's up to in this country, at least not to the Catholics that might fight on the side of their country, and so they remain oblivious. And other Roman Catholics are taught by their priests what they should do. Now, many Roman Catholics would rebel against it, but they're not told everything. You see, that's called compartmentalization. You give a person only what you want him to know, and he'll follow your lead until he finds out that he's only performing a segment of an overall policy that overall is destructive of himself. Let me give you another example of compartmentalization. When the United States created the nuclear weapon, they set up a big operation in Tennessee, okay? And they didn't want any of the manufacturers, any of the people that worked in that bomb factory to know exactly what they were building for national security. Because if they knew what they were building, they wouldn't go to work the next morning. If they were told ahead of time that they were going to make a device that would wipe out a whole nation in a matter of hours, and not only that, poison the earth and cause cancer all over the place, and would even become available to their own enemies, and that they themselves might become a target of such a dreadful weapon, none of them would go to work. So they took that project and they broke it up in segments. They educated those people on the particular part, the particular component of that weapon, never telling them what its ultimate purpose was, and they dutifully went about producing what they were instructed and educated, trained, and paid to produce. And likewise, another group of people were given another project to build another component of the bomb. And likewise, another group was given another. Some purified the uranium, some built the casing, some built the triggering mechanisms, some built the delivery systems, and nobody knew overall what it was all about. Or they wouldn't come to work, and everybody knew they wouldn't come to work. That's why they had to compartmentalize them. Well, when it was all said and done, Japan started to explode. First Hiroshima, then Nagasaki. And what ended from there was a global arms race, one that still it puts the fear of Almighty God into most thinking people's minds. We're all living under the threat of nuclear annihilation. And no one more so than myself, when I was a kid, taught to duck and cover. The sirens went off in the school, and we all ducked and covered because we were expecting the Russians to blow us up with these nuclear weapons. So, do you think those people would have gone to work if they'd have known what would have ultimately come forth from that project? No. So it's vitally important not to know the left hand, not to let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. That is the art of government. Compartmentalization. Guess which part you're in this globalism. Let me give you an example. You are taught by the mainstream media, by schools, by churches, everywhere you go, that unless Christians unite, we're going to be overrun by Muslims, and we're all going to be under Sharia law. And you know what Sharia law is. If you don't bow down to, what's his name, Muhammad? Or what's their God's name? Allah? You're going to lop off your head. And the Muslims are breeding like mice, whereas the Christian nations are practicing birth control. And in 50 years, they'll outnumber us 10-1. So we got to go to war against Islam. But more importantly, of all that, we have to unite all the Christians. That means Catholics, Baptists, Lutherans. You know, the Protestants and the Catholics got to quit this age-old, centuries-old fight and unite in order to save our country. But that's what the vast majority of Americans are taught. Guess what's taught at the secret level? The other compartment. Well, while we've got all Americans worried about the Muslims and eager to conduct a crusade against the Muslims for us, in the meantime, we're taking over Washington, D.C. And guess who that is? The Roman Catholic Church. And nobody's ever taught that Roman Catholic canon law is just as big, if not a bigger threat to Protestants than is Sharia law. You see what we're all working for? We're all going to work every day, paying taxes. At least 1/3 of our day, every day, is taken in the form of taxes. And we're buying these crusades while the Catholics are robbing the store, taking over Washington, D.C. Supreme Court doesn't have a Protestant on it. Okay? They're all Christians, they say. But they're not Christians. They're Roman Catholics. And they are, every single one of them, are oath-spitting warriors for the Pope. They've taken blood oaths to defend the papacy. Now, not only that, but because of futurism, there aren't any Protestants left to speak of. Or at least those who name themselves as Protestants can't even define it. They don't even know what it's about. And there's no threat to them whatsoever from the papacy as far as they're concerned. He's just another Christian. Matter of fact, the moral leader of the world. The moral Christian leader of the world. And we all ought to unite, all of us Christians. You see what's happening? Compartmentalization. Planned ignorance. Programmed ignorance. Mind control. That's what it is. And that is the art of war. That is the very art of war. You've heard of Sun Tzu and his art of war. Let me tell you a secret. That's not a secret to me or anybody else that's doing this research. The greatest practitioners of the art of war in the world, even more so than Sun Tzu himself, are the Jesuit order. They know the art of war better than Sun Tzu did. And they've got a whole history of practicing their art of war that can be examined carefully by those who are motivated, Protestant motivation to do so. And I am Protestantly motivated to do so. And I've read right here on this program the history of the Jesuits, the footprints of the Jesuits, many, many, many books, and showed you throughout history how they have deceived the people secretly incited them to religious unrest so that Roman Catholicism would gain in the end. Their purpose, their oath-born purpose, is to elevate the papacy to world supremacy and first and foremost to destroy Protestantism. And you know what? The founders of that Maryland colony, the only Catholic colony in this country, were Jesuit trained. Charles Carroll from Carrollton, the most famous of all the Carroll family, was Jesuit trained. John Carroll, the first American Roman Catholic bishop and the founder of the most prestigious university in this country, Jesuit John Carroll, was Jesuit trained. He was a professed Jesuit. He was under Jesuit education for 27 years, beginning at the age of 13. He hadn't even been long-lived enough to even consider himself an American yet. 13 years old, he shipped out to Flanders to be educated by the Jesuits. 27 years later, that means he was old middle age, came back to this country and was accepted as a fighter for America and given a tremendously responsible position. A Jesuit priest, even under the time when the Jesuits were suppressed. And this author is even going to admit they were suppressed at this time. The fear and the knowledge of what the Jesuits represented in the world was known by all the governments of Europe, and they demanded that the Pope destroy that organization. They were sick and tired of religious unrest between Catholics and Protestants. And it was the Jesuits that was constantly fomenting the overthrow of Protestant governments, the overthrow of Catholic governments if those Catholic governments wouldn't persecute Protestants. All of Europe was thrown into upheaval because of these Jesuits. And because of pressure from the people. After the Protestant Reformation, the Jesuits were, the Pope was forced to exterminate their organization by a papal bull. Never once have you seen that kind of reaction to a Jesuit in this country. And there's no reasonable way to explain it other than Americans are completely and totally duped. And now we're going to talk about how they were duped. Remember, many Roman Catholics came to this country to enjoy a spirit of amity between Protestants and Catholics. And I don't doubt that might have been a motive for many Roman Catholics coming to this country. They were just plain sick and tired of wars, and rumors of wars fomented by the Jesuits to elicit Roman Catholics against Protestants. And many Roman Catholics came to this country seeking religious liberty, truly seeking religious liberty. But what if among those Roman Catholics who for once in their lives wish to truly have harmony with Protestants, what if that group of Roman Catholics that come to this country brought with them a whole bunch of Jesuits that pretended to value religious liberty just like the rest of us? Well, the answer to that question is facts on the ground today. America is becoming Catholic. And Protestants are going to be persecuted like nobody's business. Protestants are already being persecuted. They've literally been stripped of their faith by Vatican Council II. Vatican Council II was an ultimatum. You believe in a future Antichrist, therefore you've exonerated the entire history of the Protestant Reformation, the entire history of the papacy. You have likewise repudiated the entire Protestant Reformation. Now, you must come back to the Roman Catholic Church, the true Church of Jesus Christ, which is really the Church of Antichrist. You must come back to the Roman Catholic Church. You must accept the Pope as your spiritual and temporal leader. You must unite all of us Christians, become Catholic in your thinking, which you already are because you're a futurist. And not only that, but you have to restore all that the papacy lost during the Protestant Reformation. Prior to the Protestant Reformation, the papacy controlled all of Europe. He dictated what the kings of Europe would do, and they ruled in the Pope's behalf, imposing canon law on all the people, making everybody Catholic, whether they were Catholic or not, and then persecuting and killing and slaughtering and torturing and murdering the saints of God. You see what compartmentalism does? Oh, they didn't tell you what Protestantism is? Oh, they didn't tell you what Vatican Council II really was? I'm going to tell you again because it probably escaped you. The Vatican Council II was an ultimatum. You've denied your Protestantism. You've exonerated the papacy. Now you got to come home to the church. You got to come home to Mother Church. And if you don't, you're going to be destroyed. By your own mouth, you have repudiated the Protestant Reformation. You've exonerated the papacy. You've got no spiritual, legal, or any other grounds to stand on to continue your protest against the Roman Catholic Church. You have violated the very throne of God Almighty, the papacy. And because you've repudiated all that, you will serve me, you will obey me, you will come under Roman Catholic canon law, and you'll fight my crusades, my global crusades, to restore to me all that you stole from me at the Protestant Reformation. You will help raise me to super sovereignty over a global government. And that's what we're doing. That's what this nation is doing. The Roman Catholic priests that walk in and advise the government of the world, those people who are graduates from Georgetown and Fordham and all these Catholic universities that occupy all the power positions in Washington, D.C., they all have one thing in common. They know Vatican Council II was a total rout of Protestantism, and that the only legitimate voice in this country for Christianity is the Roman Catholic Church. And since the Protestants, whether they knew it or not, had accepted futurism, likewise had given up on Protestantism, we're taking over. Okay? No more protests in this country. We now know, we priests, we Jesuits of Jesuit Georgetown and Fordham University, we no longer just represent the 25% of the population that are card-carrying Roman Catholics. We represent the Protestants, too, because they're not protesting anymore. They don't know what Protestantism means. Vatican Council II, they repudiated the Protestant Reformation. They exonerated the papacy. This is the Church of Jesus Christ, and we've got a political and moral mandate. And this government is either going to respond to us or we're going to destroy it from within. And all you Protestant churches out there, you can continue to call yourself Protestant all you want. You can call yourself a Baptist, a Lutheran, a Methodist, anything you want, but you're coming under Roman Catholic canon law, and you better not resist. You've already laid down your arms. You've already surrendered. Now, what happens to an enemy if he feigns a surrender, if he throws up a white flag, as they did at Vatican Council II? If they throw up the white flag and lure the enemy out to take over, if they start shooting again, it's unlimited warfare until their total annihilation. And that's exactly what the Roman Catholic Church has in store for Protestants, ecumenical Protestants. And they've all put our lives in jeopardy. Every single one of us who know what Protestantism is has to realize that they've put all of our lives in jeopardy. Now, you can describe the things that are going on in this country as not being religiously motivated, but I'm here to tell you it is religiously motivated, and it started right here in Maryland in colonial times, and we'll talk about it more when we get back from the break. Inquisition update. Welcome back to the second half hour of Inquisition Update. I hope I got your attention in the first half. Well, I'm going to get more of your attention in the second half. But before I do, I want to tell you, if you have any comments about this subject to make, you wish to talk to me, please do so by email. My email address is tom@seawaves.us. tom@seawaves.us. Before I continue, I'm going to carry on with some history about these all-important Carroll brothers in the Maryland colony. Where did they come from? What's the pedigree of Charles Carroll of Carrollton and Daniel Carroll and Roman Jesuit Bishop John Carroll, founder of Georgetown University? Where did they come from? Well, most recently they came from Roman Catholic Ireland. They immigrated from this country from Ireland. Where did they come from before that? Way back in their pedigree, where did the Carrolls come from? Well, they came from mainland Europe. Done a little research into this, not copious research, but enough to put the crumbs together. On the mainland, the ancient Carroll family were mercenaries. The entire family made their fortune as hired warriors. If the pay was good enough, if the booty was good enough, if the incentive was good enough, the Carroll family would go to war, conquer cities, conquer towns, conquer whole lands. They made their business, they made their fortune, their vast fortune as mercenaries. Any country that wanted to go to war against another country and had the money to pay, the Carrolls would side with them and fight their war for them and recruit others to fight their war for them. Paid mercenaries. Can you imagine making a living killing warriors? Well, that's what the entire Carroll family was engaged in the old world. And I mean the really old world. And they were so prolific at their art, the art of war, that they were a huge asset to the Vatican. When the Pope had depleted all of Europe of fighting men fighting their stupid crusades, the Carroll family, of course, they weren't called Carrolls. I've seen their name in print. You can't even pronounce it. But they were the ancestors of the Carroll family that this author is so infatuated with, that many researchers are so infatuated with. And the papacy hired the Carroll families to conquer Ireland, to rout out the indigenous people and make them Catholic, to bring Catholicism, to open Ireland to Catholicism. Now, prior to that, Ireland was a pagan nation, Celtic, whatever. And Rome, because of the donation of Constantine, so-called, that forgery, which is still regarded as fact at the Vatican. The donation of Constantine, because it included the word islands, it gave authority to be the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords of the islands, including England. And, of course, that included Ireland. And the Pope needed somebody to bring Catholicism to Ireland, much like the Pope needed Christopher Columbus to bring Catholicism to the Western Hemisphere. Oh, yes, Rome had lots of experience killing and claiming lands for the Pope long before they came to the continental United States, the continental Americas. And the Carrolls did it. They conquered Ireland. And that's why Ireland is vastly Catholic today. And that's why Protestants are persecuted today in Ireland. Thanks to the Carols. As a matter of fact, they were so prolific and well known as warriors, and warriors for the Pope, their ancient family shield and their ancient family motto championed their war-making success. And when they came to this country, when they immigrated from Ireland to this country with the same purpose, they had to change their family shield and their family motto so as not to upset the Protestants that already were here. You know, I got people telling me in one ear all the time, America was Catholic from the very beginning. America was Catholic from the very beginning. Was it really? Well, then why did the Roman Catholic Church have to hire the mercenary Carroll family to come and help conquer this Protestant land? Okay, I'm going to get the last word in this argument. God's blessing was on the pilgrims who came to this country. God's blessing was on the pilgrims and the protesters that came to this country seeking religious freedom from the Antichrist of Europe. And that made the colonies a desperate target for the papacy, because after all, the donation of Constantine says, well, the Pope's got the right to rule the whole world. He's the vicar of Christ. He's God in the flesh. And we've got to bring Catholicism to America before it becomes a Protestant country and leads the rest of the world in war against the papacy. So they hired the Carols, the same ones who conquered Ireland for the Pope. And of course, since the Protestants are already there, 12 of the 13 colonies are Protestant, writing and passing laws prohibiting the practice of Roman Catholicism and threatening the lives of any Roman Catholic, seen by the Protestants as a lethal threat, because they knew all about all the persecutions of the saints throughout history. At that point, 1,500 years of persecution by the Roman Catholic Church. All of Europe ran red with the blood of God's saints. And they were practically defenseless. All they had was the truth for their weapons. You know? You tell me America was Catholic from the beginning? Hogwash! That's a lie! And it's used by Protestants to persuade other Protestants to lay down their arms. We don't have a fighting chance. Well, I got news for you. We still have God on our side, and though we be just a handful, we still have the truth in our mouth, and I'm not going to concede this land to the Pope. And I'm not going to give excuse to you or this author for claiming originality in this country when the Protestants owned it, lock, stock, and barrel. The gospel came to this country. I'm not going to play second citizen to Roman Catholics. I'm not going to play second citizen to papists and idolaters and sodomites. Christ is still my king. The gospel is still my byword. And I know who wins in the end. And it's the purpose of Inquisition Update to wake up the Protestant spirit in this country. I don't intend to surrender. I'm not waving any white flag to the Pope. And I'm not going to give him excuse to claim our government just because he hired the Carroll family to come in and plant the seed of Satan in this colonial period through the Carroll boys. Now, I think it's a mistake, even of Protestants, not to acknowledge the role that the Carroll family played in the Maryland colony to establish the federal seat of our government. We're going to cover that in this book. But nothing this author says, nothing that anybody else says, should be used to justify a surrender to Roman Catholicism. There's some of you in the researching field that have taken an interest in this, are promoting the idea of America was Catholic from the beginning. America was Catholic from the beginning. You keep repeating that mantra, and we'll all just give up our ghosts. Well, I'm not giving up nothing. America was Protestant in the beginning. And there's still some hope that that Protestant carcass might come back to life if we would surrender this cockamamie idea in a future Antichrist and return to Protestant belief that the papacy is the Antichrist. It's the papacy who is enslaving us today. It's the papacy that overthrew Protestantism through their Jesuit futurism. America was Catholic from the beginning. Baloney. I don't need to spend time with that kind of an attitude. You ought to be condemned. America was Protestant from the beginning. And though all the nations of the world lie in wait for the judgment of Almighty God, original Protestantism, the original pilgrims in this country, will enjoy God's rest. And I intend to be one of them. And not by sitting on my hands and wringing my hands about Catholics ruling this country. I'm going to war. Spiritual war. If you want anything to show when Christ returns, you show that you stood fast for the gospel. If you stand fast for the gospel, then you must stand fast for Protestantism and protest the Antichrist. Don't make excuses for him. Don't negotiate with him, and don't give him any more credit than he deserves. Idolatry is a sin. It's forbidden in the first and second commandments. Why are they the first and second commandments? Because God told us by the first and second commandments who it is we're at war against. I'm the God that brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You'll have no other gods before me. Well, who is the man in the world that calls him a God that you are to worship before the Creator? The papacy. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, the earth beneath, or the waters under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down to them nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children of the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy to the thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Who are the idolaters in the world? The Catholic Church, the papacy. They worship a man. They worship images and idols. It's not Christianity. And they have enslaved you through the government of the United States. And here you are going about telling we're the Catholic. America was Catholic from the beginning. America was Catholic from the beginning. I detest you. America was Christian in the beginning. America was Protestant in the beginning. I don't care what role George Washington played. I don't care what role the Calverts played. I don't care what role the Carrolls played. If they're significant in history, I acknowledge it, but it was Protestantism that brought liberty to the colonies And because that liberty already existed, Rome had to play our game. Rome had to play the Protestant game. And that's why Maryland, a Roman Catholic country, had to completely change its typical historical and prophetic Roman game and become more Protestant than the Protestants. And had to declare of all the colonies, only Maryland championed religious liberty. And why? Because they would have been annihilated if they'd have interjected the Pope on this turf. Why make concessions such as that if America was Catholic from the beginning? You repeat that mantra over and over and over, and you defy your own mind. You defy your own Protestant spirit. And you betray Christ. Well, I won't have it. Not on Inquisition Update. No way. You want to make a name for yourself telling everybody America was Catholic from the beginning? You go right ahead, but not without my blessing. Something you heard somewhere else, and you just repeat it over and over and over like it was your idea. It's time you do a little bit of your own independent research instead of just repeating what somebody else says. The Carroll family were historical warriors, mercenaries. They were hired by the Roman Catholic Church to make Ireland Catholic. They did the same thing in America, even though they only started with one colony. Out of entire 13 colonies, there was only one Roman Catholic colony, and they virtually had to declare religious liberty, or they would have been annihilated, and Rome would have been shut out, and she never would have had an opportunity to make America Catholic. The colonial period was Protestant. America was Protestant. Only Maryland was Catholic. The Pope was counting on those Carroll boys, just like he counted on them when they conquered Ireland. Hope against hope. And because of the ignorance of Protestants, the forgetfulness of Protestants in the colonies, they allowed those Catholics to continue. And not only that, to help sign the Declaration of Independence from Protestant Great Britain, and to establish the formal government, the formal federal government of this country in Washington, D.C. Well, I don't put up with that kind of ignorance anymore. The Protestants made a mistake in their founding. I don't intend to repeat it. Okay, initially, beginning on page 5 where we left off yesterday, initially Maryland was intended to be the exception to the rule. Now we're talking about religious persecution. I mean, after all, in order to defend themselves, the Protestants, knowing what Roman Catholicism was, knowing that their heads would be, depart their shoulders if the Pope ever got control of this country. You couldn't practice Roman Catholicism in this country. I'm sorry. If you don't think that's fair, then you need to study the old world order. But Protestants were not allowed. They were not going to allow the Catholics to practice their faith. No public masses. If you're going to be Catholic, you better be doing it in secret. You better be doing it in secret. We've had enough of you. For centuries, for over a millennium, we've suffered at your hands. We want peace. We want Protestantism. And you Catholic founders of Maryland better hear this. We're not going to put up with it. We know whose faith you have, and that's the faith of the Pope, and you worship him, and he is against Protestantism. We liberated all of Europe from his control, and by doggies, we're not going to allow you to enslave us once again to the Pope. So you can forget about being a cop, a sheriff, a military man. You can forget about being a politician. Hell, we're not even going to allow you to vote, because if you vote, you're going to vote for a Catholic, and we're off to the races again. And we've shed enough blood. We've had enough of our blood shed by you and your kind. England is in turmoil today because the Pope will not give up his claim to England. Ireland is in trouble today because Rome won't give up her claim to Ireland. America's in trouble today because the Pope won't give up his claim on America. And that claim comes from both Christopher Columbus and these Carol boys. Okay? Have I given enough deference to the Carols and the significance of the Carol family? Well, I'm not done yet. But I don't forget, out of everything that I say about the Carol families, and all of it's factual, do not interpret any of this or all of it in total to put in your mind that even the suggestion that America was Catholic from the beginning. It was Protestant. It was Rome who had to make the concessions. The expediency of religious liberty in Maryland was only to save their lives, so that over time, Rome could practice and prosper. And with the Jesuits' help, who were on board the Ark and the Dove when they came over here, that through the leadership of the master Sun Tzu warriors of the world, we can eventually conquer this land. And not by force of arms, but by persuasion, persistent persuasion. All we got to do is lull these Protestants to sleep. And we've got an idea how we're going to do that, too. Okay? It came at the Council of Trent. Right after the Protestant Reformation, Rome already knew her war strategy for conquering the Protestants. And I've told you 100 times how they did it. Futurism. You believe in a future Antichrist, taking Daniel's prophecy completely out of context. Did you know Daniel's prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, verse 23 through 27 is talking about the Messiah, Jesus Christ, and him only? Never once is the Antichrist mentioned. Oh, but you'll point to the passage that says, well, the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Who destroyed the city and the sanctuary? That being Jerusalem and the temple. Well, that was Titus, Titus's 10th Legion. Well, guess who Titus was? The prince or the son of the current Caesar at the time, the Roman Caesar at the time, Vespasian. And you've all been led to believe that that prince that shall come is the Antichrist. A future Antichrist. They're going to take the 70th week of Daniel and separate it from the 69th week and tack it all the way up to the end of time, so nobody has to worry about the Antichrist because he didn't come till the end. That exonerates the papacy. See what you did? You believed a lie, and now it has consequences. You don't see the Pope as the Antichrist. Therefore, you're not Protestant. You don't have any idea what Protestantism is. Protestantism is the belief that the papacy and only the papacy could be and ever be the Antichrist. They were absolutely right. And if you've departed from that belief, you cannot call yourself a Protestant. You can call yourself a papist. I will give you the benefit of the doubt and just call you a futurist, but if you're a futurist, you're on the road to Rome, baby. You certainly will never return to Protestantism if you believe in a future Antichrist that hasn't come yet. And that's why you look at people like me as some kind of a religious fanatic or somebody that's got a grudge against the Roman Catholic Church. None of that! I'm talking about the historical belief of Protestantism. true Bible believerism. That's what Protestantism is. They let the Bible be their guide, and the Bible plainly told them, in words that cannot be denied, it's the papacy. Protestants were all unanimous in that belief. If you don't believe in that today, you're not Protestant. And these Carol boys are going to kick your behind. They're going to kick it for 250 years. And they have. And that's why you're enslaved. I want you to understand this. We'll continue Monday on the broadcast. Don't want any of my listeners to be ignorant about what's going on in this world today. Inquisition update on First Amendment Radio. Somebody pray for me. I'll see you Monday.